Greetings, salutations, and welcome to the Kreeger cast. I'm your host, Patrick Kreeger, and I'm joined by Jack today.
Once again, back again.
I was going to say, that's normally the way I introduce people who are coming back for a second time, is I'm joined once again by so-and-so. But I didn't know for sure, actually, if you've heard that, so it's funny that you brought that up.
No, that's just made sense to say in the moment.
So, today is going to be a free-range podcast, but we are going to try to keep it a little bit to spooky movies, horror movies.
It's October 1st.
It is, yeah.
The next hour and a half.
Yeah, we're actually recording this on October 1st, and yeah, next hour and 20 minutes or so. Ish. Yeah. But anyway. So, originally we were going to talk about John Carpenter films, and we will get to that, but you were noticing that I have some chainmail out on the table.
Yeah. I'm just kind of fascinated by, this must have taken you forever to build this necklace here.
It's actually a little quicker than you would think. That particular one took me no more than an hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah, I've gotten really good at speed weaving. So it's a Byzantine weave. For those of you who want to Google that or anything like that, yeah, it's a Byzantine weave, and the first one I ever made took me 2 days, to learn the weave and stuff like that.
Now you can just do it in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I can weave about 20 inches of chain in an hour and a half. And so I get pretty waspy at it. The thing next to it is an American flag I'm working on, and each row of that takes me about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So I'm weaving currently a full-sized American flag. By full-size, I mean a 4-foot by 8-foot American flag. It's going to be 380,000 connections.
Ooh.
Yeah. I keep telling people it's 500,000 connections because, one, that sounds better. Yeah. And two, it will actually be that kind of close to it because of all the experimentation I have to do. I'm constantly trying to figure out, and still haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do the star pattern in the American flag.
Yeah, I imagine that would be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, when you're not working off of someone else's design, when you're trying to weave your own artwork, it's a little difficult. But yeah, I enjoy doing this stuff.
You should open up an Etsy shop or something. This is good. Cosplayers would buy this, or medieval LARPers, or those kinds of people.
Well, I've been considering weaving some of the nicer stuff to put in the gift shop at my distillery.
You could also put it online, though.
I should.
Just do both.
All right, I'll start weaving a little bit more for.
That's fascinating though, just because how many people do you know that
chainmail weave?
Yeah, the chainmail weave.
Literally the one guy I taught. That's it.
Yeah, it's a dying art. Bringing it back.
So
chainmail is German police use that.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, because it's a good ballistic protection.
No, it's not.
What? Or not ballistic protection, knife, edged weapons.
Yes, surviving edged weapons.
Yeah, if you want to survive edged weapons from the knife culture.
Yeah, the thing with chainmail is that there was a big debate about putting chainmail on police officers' uniforms because when it gets hit by bullets, it becomes shrapnel.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a problem in that sense. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the talk is that it should be on the outside of the bulletproof vest so that it gets damaged by the bulletproof vest. Before it goes in and the bulletproof vest can help stop it. Or should it go on the inside so that when the bullet goes in, it doesn't have a chance to rupture it? But then you have knives going through bulletproof vests. Bullet-resistant vests.
Yeah, well, Kevlar. Yeah, Kevlar won't stop cutting weapons or piercing weapons.
But chainmail will. Chainmail, a properly constructed chainmail shirt, will stop any edged weapon short of a crossbow.
Ooh.
It's actually fascinating the concept that a lot of medieval armor actually, when you're hitting someone with a sword who's in proper armor, you're not cutting them. You're hitting them with a bar of metal.
Yeah.
And that's what's doing the damage.
Blunt force.
Yeah. At a point, like, it is coming to a very fine point, so it's a lot of energy at one place, but it's not cutting through.
Yeah.
Unless the person's incredibly poor and doesn't have armor, which chainmail is expensive.
Yeah,
so
well, I'd imagine plate armor was what, probably just a breastplate, and a helmet is, I'd imagine that's just what most soldiers would wear, and then
so
the chainmail was for people who could afford it.
Yeah, so there's actually a really great video that Lindy Beige does on armor, and particularly budget armor, and what piece of armor you buy first. So the first thing you buy is a chest plate, then a helmet, and you go up from there. If you can afford it, you get a chainmail shirt and coif, the garment for the head. But realistically, a nice set, like a chainmail shirt and a chainmail coif, is going to protect you from just about anything, because it's not the chainmail alone. The chainmail is part of a system. You're wearing layers upon layers of fabric underneath the chainmail that help absorb hits and even like
diffuse the
energy.
The blow.
Yeah, because even like a longbow can go through chainmail at a short distance, but it doesn't go through deep. Like a longbow at like less than 60 yards will go through chainmail by like 2 inches. And so if you're wearing chainmail like up against your skin, 2 inches in, now you're bleeding pretty profusely.
Yeah.
But if you have like 1.5 inches of like leather and canvas and other things in between you and that, one, it's going to slow down the projectile a ton. And the other thing is it's going to prevent it from doing damage as it went through. The other thing is chainmail is light. People don't get that. Now, it's not like super light. Like, I wouldn't say, oh, you can just wear chainmail.
It's lighter than plate armor, right?
No. So plate armor is actually really fascinating in that, it's funny, this is going to be a whole tangent on armors, but hey, that's fine. A good set of chainmail that's properly fitted. Okay? Chainmail should be fitted to you. For the shirt and the coif is going to probably weigh somewhere around 40 pounds. Whereas like full plate head to toe coverage properly fitted to you weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of like 55 pounds.
Okay.
So yeah, okay, full plate is heavier, but full plate is full plate. Chainmail is just covering your chest and your head and your neck. Of course, you can get chainmail pants too, but then that ups the weight again.
Yeah.
But it's all about the custom fit. It's actually really cool. I was listening to a lecture that the head of armor restoration for the British Museum was giving at our local community college. He's a friend of one of the people on the staff at the community college, and so they had him on. And he was talking about armor, and he said that he has a helmet from, I can't remember exactly when he said the helmet was, but the shtick with the helmet was this helmet alone weighed 5 pounds. Okay, this metal helmet, and it could stop a .223 bullet. The common military cartridge. I guess the military version is 5.56, but that's beside the point. Like, this armor's good enough to stop a bullet. But the thing that he found fascinating about it is how light it is. And the way it's so light is like whenever you have overlapping metal, the metal was thinner there. So that you had the same thickness of metal all the way around the helmet. But where there was overlapping metal, it got thinner.
It's crafted well enough that the artisan or the armorer accounted for all that.
Exactly. Yeah, like whoever crafted this helmet realized we don't need extra metal here, so we'll make it thinner. But like, it's hard to get across without diagrams. But what I'm talking about is individual pieces of the helmet were thicker and thinner in parts. Like, the chin guard was a single piece of metal, but it was thinner and thicker, depending on what part of the chin guard you're dealing with, which is just something that we wouldn't do today. It would be so much quicker, so much cheaper to make a single sheet of steel and not worry about it. But since each piece of steel had to be hand hammered, some of it was hammered thinner and some of it was left thicker, and there's flow in individual pieces of metal in the helmet.
I mean, there is kind of that in modern design, aircraft and tank design, where certain parts are thinner.
Yes, but not when we're talking about this sort of gauge of metal. Yeah. Typically, if you were to do something like this and it needed to be thinner for whatever reason, you would weld it together. Take a thinner piece of metal and a thicker piece of metal and weld it together. If you really had to, you could machine it thinner, but that just takes so much effort. Why do it? What you would typically do if you wanted to do the similar thing here is go with a lighter metal, which we could do now, but they couldn't do then. Because the whole point was to get these suits of armor as light as possible.
I assume that wasn't some kind of... that was probably something that wasn't widely used. It was...
Oh no, this is the high end stuff.
Yeah. I'd imagine that you had to be some kind of master blacksmith or whatever the word would be for an armorer.
Oh gosh, there is a particular term for armorer. But yeah,
armorsmith.
I say like a good set of plate mail can weigh as little as 55 pounds, but that's a great set of plate mail. That's not your average. Your average weighs closer to 90 pounds, and your cheaper ones get heavier.
Yeah.
Any corner that can get cut gets cut, and part of that is making unique pieces of metal. And like I said, the fit to you is so critical. Like, you can't just give someone else your set of armor. That just doesn't work. Because it really is a fitted garment, for lack of a better term. But it's kind of a whole tangent. But I do love my
This
armor.
is the spooky Halloween podcast. We're not supposed to be talking about armor. We're supposed to be talking about
the Thing.
Well, yeah, the Thing, or everyone knows the Thing. It's like everyone's seen the Thing. Well, not everyone, but
have you read the Thing comic books though?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
they're not called that, aren't they?
It's not.
Who Goes There?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it's almost exactly that, but I can't remember off the top of my head anymore. It's weird. It's really weird.
I'd imagine so.
Like, the first thing that happens, spoiler alert, is like a special forces unit shows up right at the end of the movie. Like, it takes place immediately after the movie, and like a U.S. Special Forces team just shows up, and of course gets infected by the Thing.
Okay.
And...
Oh, is that what the game was based on? There was a crappy game based on the Thing, like
really?
the John Carpenter movie, and I didn't play it. I watched Let's Plays of it. It looks like it sucks, but apparently John Carpenter actually oversaw the whole production. Like, he actually, I think, wrote the script for it, and I'm not sure of his, like, how much involved, like if he was actually at the studio as they were designing it. Probably not, but he did oversee parts of it, which makes it interesting.
Yeah. Because it makes it canon?
I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the whole Thing canon, just because of how
old the book is.
Well, yeah, there's the book, and then there was also the 50s movie.
Yeah.
The Thing from Another World. It's like this black and white movie where the Thing is a giant Frankenstein monster. And then, of course, there's the 80s movie. And then there's the 2011 movie that's just basically
it's a prequel.
It's a prequel, but it's basically just the 80s movie, but worse. And I mean, I don't know, if I were to make a Thing movie, here's my Thing reboot or sequel or prequel. Just set it somewhere different. Don't set it in the Arctic. Just set it in like the desert.
Huh.
I don't know, just I don't get these. I mean, I understand why they're made. They're just made for brand recognition. But a lot of these reboots will take place. They'll like use a setting that's extremely similar to the original, in a way that doesn't really add anything.
Well, it makes sense with the prequel.
Yeah, but why? Like, why even do that? It's not cool. It's cool that in the original movie, how you don't really know exactly what happens with the Norwegian base.
Yeah.
They only find it after it's been destroyed, and the only people from that base that you see are killed in the opening scene. And then the prequel just explains that. But
yep.
It's like you already know what happens, and it's kind of the same setting anyway. It's just an Arctic base, the same as the original movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would just why not just set it in, I don't know, in the desert, like.
Well, it has to do with the thing itself. Like, the thing is such a horrifying creature that can do so much as soon as it's exposed to life.
Yeah.
And so the only place that was devoid of life is the Arctic, and I think that's why you brought up the concept of the desert.
Yeah, well, that's the point, because if you set it...
You couldn't set it in a jungle.
You could set it in a jungle, and the whole movie would be apocalyptic, because obviously at the end it would just take over the world. But that could be interesting.
I suppose. You could theoretically set it in a savanna and keep it contained, because the thing...
Well, that would be interesting. You set it in an oasis.
Yeah.
where they find the thing in the desert, they accidentally resurrect it or something, and then they accidentally bring it to an oasis, and it takes over the entire oasis of this desert. Yeah, becomes a thing. Wad.
A thing.
Yeah.
Well, in the comic books, it gets into the South American jungles. And
oh wait, can it take over plant life? Is that canon?
So that's where I was going with this. Is no, in the
okay, so only
animal life.
That's different.
And actually, I don't think it was ever shown taking over non-mammalian life. No, it totally was. Yeah, it was.
I mean, it has like insect. In the movie, in the 80s movie, it has the insect legs that it grows and the kind of arthropod limbs and things like that kind of imply that it might have absorbed the DNA of
bugs,
of insects or crustaceans or something, like not even within the movie, but well, in the movie it's frozen and it's implied to be like hundreds of thousands or millions of years old, and so it could be all that stuff was alien life or stuff that it absorbed before it was frozen. Maybe it absorbed some stuff like after crashing, but then became frozen after that.
Possible. So, I'm going to talk about the most ridiculous scene in the comics. So, they're running through the Arctic, and they're just about to die, the characters in the comic. And out of nowhere, just a submarine surfaces.
That's convenient.
It is so convenient. And then the thing takes over the whole submarine and crashes it. And so that's the thing about the thing on the submarine, is that it ends up collecting little sea life on the ocean floor to then come back. But
well, at that point, once it reaches the ocean, then it's game over for everything else on Earth, because it could just absorb things that swim and then just take over everything else in the ocean, just because of the free movement that the ocean allows.
So that's one of the things about the thing is, I think...
Or does it just really hate salt water?
So that's one of the things about the thing is that it seems to be a single entity that doesn't spread. And I think that's only for the convenience of the comics and the movie.
Yeah, because I was going to say, why wouldn't it spread?
Yeah.
Well, unless it's
a single consciousness.
Well, maybe it's intelligent enough to realize that completely absorbing the ecosystem would kill it, would cause it to die, because there would be no
food left.
Yeah, there'd be nothing else for it to consume.
Well, that's a thing in the book series, is that it becomes intelligent. It's it's animalistic at first, but then eventually becomes intelligent to the point where they can talk to it and reason with it.
That's really weird.
Yeah, the comic book series is a trip. Like,
I mean, I'd imagine it goes into a much greater depth.
Yeah,
which is kind of the strength of the film, is it doesn't go into that, because I feel like movies, the less you explain, or the less you have to explain, the better. When there's that ambiguity, because the movie doesn't really explain a whole lot. But it explains just enough for the premise to work, but also to kind of ignite a sense of mystery. There's enough ambiguity to keep you guessing and to make you want to guess. I mean, if you look at all the internet comments and fan forums and things like that, there's all these fan theories and people. I think that's the best kind of movie. At least in terms of like fiction and things like that, is something that's ambiguous enough but captivating enough that you are guessing as to that all the stuff that the movie doesn't convey, doesn't explicitly spell out. Like the ending, is one of at the ending where Kurt Russell and I forget the other actor's name.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
I don't think he was ever a big guy, which is weird because that movie. The actors in that movie are all really good, but only Kurt Russell and what's his name, diabetes guy. Why can't I remember?
I can't remember his name.
They're like the only actors in the movie. Everyone else is kind of just people who never really made it big or not really like known people. But everyone gives a really good performance in that movie. It's really like interesting too, because I think that's also the best kind of thing you could have is when you have nobodies who give a really great performance, because then you don't see them as like as their actor, like I hate that in movies. Like there's stars that are in all these movies, like Tom Cruise. It's like it's just Tom Cruise.
Literally, I was thinking about Tom Cruise and
Tom
Valkyries.
Cruise or Brad Pitt, or like actors who are just in everything, and you never see. I mean, maybe this is just me, but I never see those actors as the characters they're portraying.
My problem is I almost always see them as the characters they're portraying.
Oh. So
like, particularly with Robert Downey Jr., whenever I see him in anything else, I see him as Tony Stark in that movie. Unfortunately, the same thing with Tom Cruise. When I see him in things, I'm like, why is Stauffenberg doing these things?
That's a very specific movie to think about.
With Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
It's the first time I saw him.
Oh, okay.
I never watched any of the Mission Impossible
so I would think
films.
most people would say Mission Impossible.
Yeah. I saw them after. Well, I've only seen one. But I saw that after I saw Valkyrie.
But yeah, The Thing. Wow. What a movie. There's other John Carpenter movies that no one talks about.
I've not actually seen The Thing.
What? That's sickening.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Thing. I've seen Let's Plays of the video game.
Oh, God. You're deprived.
I've read the comics.
No, you've read the comics. That's something I haven't done, so I can't say anything. But
and I watched a ton of reviews of the prequel thing.
Oh, no.
As well as detailed analysis.
What's funny about The Thing, the 80s movie, is how it was a flop when it came out.
Yeah.
And it sucked, and everyone said it was terrible. But that movie was so influential. Not in movies, but in like video games and comics, and even I think a lot of anime like rips off The Thing. I think of like Dead Space, all like the body horror mutations.
Akira?
I
don't know if that's before or after.
That was after. That was 88, I think. 1988. But and the manga was going at the same, like, I think started before the Thing movie.
I would imagine, but
there's I mean, I could see that. It probably wasn't influenced by the Thing, but I almost want to say JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was influenced by the Thing.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. There's these ancient, I guess you would, there's these ancient vampires in that series that are kind of the main antagonist. and they're kind of portrayed visually as, actually no, some of them are like these muscle bodybuilder looking guys, but to get to the point, they have the way they don't just bite you and suck your blood out. Instead, they absorb you like the Thing, and they can move their body around and kind of mutate it in the same way that the Thing does. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of that sort of media was influenced by the Thing.
I think Life Force.
Life Force?
Yeah.
The
film.
I think I've seen the Life Force.
The French movie with the vampires that suck essences.
I haven't seen that.
And reanimate corpses.
I mean, yeah, sounds like that would be a thing.
That is a thing.
The Flood from Halo. Totally a ripoff of the Thing. But I think that's good. Okay. I think it's very cool how a lot of video game media and that kind of stuff was influenced by these movies whose impacts weren't immediately felt. Because no one in the 80s was talking about the Thing that way. It's like Blade Runner. It became popular way later, like a decade later.
I think that's something even Red Letter Media brings up about Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Strange Things.
What is it? In the first episode, there's like the poster on the wall.
Yeah,
of the thing. And I'm like, that's not... I mean, I wasn't around then, but just reading about how that movie was received, I don't know. That would be like having a Prince of Darkness poster or a Mouth of Madness poster on your wall.
Yeah.
And you haven't seen those because those are other John Carpenter movies that most people haven't seen, but you should see.
I don't think I've seen a single John Carpenter film.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll admit something. I've seen a lot of his films. I haven't seen Halloween. Isn't that weird?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's like his main... That's like the John Carpenter movie. I mean, I've seen like Escape from New York and Escape from L.A.
I would say The Thing is the John Carpenter film.
Yeah, it's debatable, but... yeah, Prince of Darkness and Mouth of Madness. Well, actually, he has The Thing and those other two movies that I just named off. They're not part of the same canon, but he designed all those movies, or he shot all those movies with the intent of them being viewed in kind of the same way, where they're kind of all apocalyptic horror movies. Mm-hmm. Granted, The Thing is a sci-fi. Mouth of Madness is like a Lovecraft tribute. I mean, even the name is based on Mountains of Madness. Prince of Darkness is more, I guess you could say, like Christian end of days kind of horror. But they all deal with the end of the world in one way or another. I guess The Thing, not explicitly, but...
it's heavily implied.
Yeah, it's heavily implied that the Thing would essentially destroy all... Or absorb all organic life. And
they even mentioned that with the computers.
Yeah. But yeah, then there's these other two movies, not nearly as good as The Thing. Probably why you don't hear about them. There's Prince of Darkness, which is... How would I explain the plot? It sounds very stupid when I describe it, but...
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so... There's an abandoned church, or a church that's being decommissioned or something in L.A. Most 80s movies are set in L.A. And there's some science team that wants to go investigate because there's a mysterious object in the basement. And it's a giant tube of mysterious green goo that's in the basement of the church. And this goo contains the essence of Satan. It sounds so stupid when I put it like that, but it's one of those things where it sounds dumb on paper, but the way the movie is shot and the way it, like the small details of the movie and the way it plays out, it's still effective just because of how strange it is. Because this. I mean, I guess the Satan goo isn't really that important to the movie. It's just that Satan is essentially contained. That's his, I guess, door to the world. But there's a lot of interesting visuals in the movie. just kind of, I guess you could say, like biblical horror of pestilence and pestilence, because the movie keeps zooming in on like swarms of ants or termites or beetles, and how Satan is kind of taking over these organisms or just taking over people. I remember there's a really weird scene in the movie where one of the characters, he's killed earlier in the movie and the other characters don't realize it, but they see him again, like all the main characters are in a room in the church and they're looking out the window and they see this guy, and he essentially has a message for them that they're all going to die, but you start seeing his body dissolve into beetles.
Creepy.
Yeah. What's interesting though, and this is kind of leads into why I like John Carpenter, is just how cheap his movies are, but they still look very good.
Yeah.
Like they were shot for a relatively small amount of money, and they were very creative with how they used effects and how they used lighting. I don't know. I find that really interesting about a lot of old movies. Well, not that old, 80s movies, 70s movies. Is the creativity that went into how the movies look visually, how they did special effects.
Well, they had to plan more ahead for it. Yeah. It wasn't just something we could do in post.
Yeah, like I always think of the original Terminator from the 80s. That there's a scene at the end when the Terminator is destroyed in the trash compactor, and it just zooms in on its skull, I guess you'd say, and as the little lights on the eye turn off, but there's some smoke coming out of it. But what the smoke actually was they just lit a cigarette and just put it near the camera, and that's just cigarette smoke.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I love little things like that in movies. And that's what I like about John Carpenter, is he has a lot of those sort of interesting little details or just creative aspects to the filmmaking.
Craft.
Yeah. Craft.
Yeah.
Remember when movies had those?
Ooh. Not to bring it back up, but Fury Road had a lot of effort put into it.
Yeah. Well, because that actually had they actually built all the vehicles out of junk, basically. I remember reading the behind the scenes, and what they did was their prop team essentially just went to some junkyards in Australia and just looked for stuff, and that was used to make all the props and all the clothes and then all the vehicles. They just took bodies of destroyed or damaged vehicles that they found and just built a bunch of DIY vehicles.
It worked.
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting ones is the tank, the car tank. It's just it's essentially they just found like three, what was it? I can't remember the name of the car. It was like 3 Valiant Chargers or something. I'm not a car person.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And also Australians use different names for their cars.
Oh.
So, like, they would sell the same car here and there, but they would have different names.
Huh.
Because,
it's like a marketing thing?
Because copyright.
Oh.
So, for example, Charger is copyrighted by Dodge in the U.S., but I think it was copyrighted by, like, GM in Australia. I could be off by that, but yeah, there's a whole thing about that. A lot of Canadian vehicles have the same issue.
Huh.
So, but that's off topic.
Yeah, no, and that was one of the reasons I like the movie, is just the creativity that went into like the prop design and the vehicles and things. And one of my favorite movies is a crappy movie from 1990 called Hardware.
Not familiar at all.
It's great. You should watch it.
Wait, is this the film you had on at the last Halloween party?
Yes, maybe.
Possibly.
It's a very orange movie. Do you remember the color orange?
No, I just remember the only thing I saw was a shower scene. I walked in, there was a shower scene going on, and
there's 2 shower scenes in the movie.
I was only there for like a minute.
It's a great movie.
Oh,
you should watch it. No, it kind of sucks and falls apart halfway through it. Like the build up is good, and then when the thing it's building up towards
pays off.
It doesn't pay off.
Oh,
it sucks. Or it pays off in the most predictable, lame way possible. But what I like about it is it has that craft to it. It was a very low budget movie. I think it was only shot for like $1 million.
Yeah, it looked
like
pretty low budget, but the quality of the film I saw was not bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic movie, which kind of is an easy way of making a movie on the cheap, just because, well, everything's junk.
Anyway,
so
yeah.
And so it has those elements to it of just props that look real, that look believable, that were just made of garbage. I don't know. I just love that.
Yeah.
I guess there's no way to really explain it.
So I have the tendency of buying these movie bundles.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I'll go to Walmart, go through their like dollar bin, and pull out movie bundles. And so I was watching a series of bad movies, and one of them was the cell line for it was 30 years ago, this family was brutally murdered, and the spirit that killed them still lurks. So I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a ghost film. No. Like, oh man. So it was somehow they legitimately got a student film and put it on here on this like movie box set. And the concept was it was supposed to be a Bigfoot film.
Oh God.
And they never I looked a little into it, and it was supposed to be a Bigfoot film, but they forgot to film any scenes describing it as Bigfoot.
Ooh.
So they're like, great, we have this like half shot film, and we have all this footage of a man with a knife covered in fur attacking people. Ooh. So eventually they're like, oh, let's just call it the guy's brother. So I wish I could remember the name, but the concept, the particular horror movie monster was great because it was just some guy with fur glued to him. Like, just glued to the guy.
Bigfoot, that's like the lamest horror movie thing. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but
Bigfoot's scary, man.
The actual legends are cool, but I don't know. Bigfoot horror movie just screams people wandering around in the woods for an hour and a half.
See, but that's the thing, is it wasn't. It was people wandering around in a house for an hour
and a half.
Oh,
that changes everything. That's basically the end of Hardware. That's why it sucks. It's the opening, the first half of it. It's like a 2-hour movie. The first hour is deserts and post-apocalyptic ruins and junkyards and really actually cool-looking matte painting backgrounds and these sets that are filled with detail and amazingly lit. And it's like Renaissance painting, chiaroscuro lighting. And then an hour into the movie. Okay, well, I guess to give people an idea of what the movie's actually about, Hardware just makes it sound like some kind of Tim the Toolman shit.
I was legitimately thinking that it's a horror movie with a slasher that uses hardware tools.
Well, it does use hardware tools at one part, and it's lame and a waste. But basically, the plot is post-apocalypse. It's not really clear why. It's not. I think it's implied to be a nuclear war. I guess that's not too important. But the movie opens up with some guy with a gas mask. Looks very Fallout-ish, just wandering around the desert. Mm-hmm. He goes through a minefield and clears some of the mines, and then he finds some junk, like robot parts, and then he puts them in a bag, and then he sells them to what are essentially the main characters, and the main character gives it to his girlfriend, and she's like a weirdo artist, and she turns it into like a weird art piece. But what it turns out is that it's actually basically a killer drone that the government produced to just kill people. They're just like, it's like a military weapon. And it's implied that they have some kind of well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But long story short, it wakes up and merges with some of the other robot parts, but also some of the hardware that she has, like drills and torches and stuff like that. So it does kill people with
random tools.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of a waste though, because when it wakes up, it's actually really cool. It's almost like it reminds me of a mechanical The Thing, because there's all these shots of it assembling itself.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's stop motion, but it actually looks pretty good. Some of it's animatronic. Some of it's just some other kinds of film trickery to make it look like it's reassembling. And it's a cool concept, like the idea of a killer machine that can just merge with other mechanical objects and hack computers and do that kind of stuff to kill people. But then they never really use anything with that. And there's an exact moment where the movie sucks, where it goes from being cool to sucking. The robot gets loose and it shuts off all the power in the apartment building they're trapped in, which, by the way, the rest of the movie takes place in. The rest of the movie is just inside like one room, basically.
Oh God!
Yeah,
in the dark.
Yeah, occasionally there's light.
Oh,
but
okay.
And there's like a B plot where there's like a creepy rapist who lives in the other apartment across the street, who's like taking nude photos of the protagonist's girlfriend, but he's using like an infrared camera, so you just see like predator vision. So I'm like, how is he getting off to this?
People are weird.
And I should mention, in this, he's supposed to be a stand-in for Harvey Weinstein.
Seriously?
Yeah, because I think the Weinstein Company had something to do with the production of the movie, but his name is Weinberg, and he's just kind of like a fat, disgusting-looking guy, and he is like a rapist. He like tries to rape the girl, but then
before its time.
Oh yeah, what?
The movie was before its time.
Yeah, no, it
ahead of its
predicted
time.
The future. No one's seen it, so it didn't matter. But anyway, the exact point where the movie sucks is the creepy rapist guy, is like spying on her, and then he notices all the lights shut off and all the alarm systems or emergency shutters, whatever, go on the apartment. And then so he goes over there, and then it's the most predictable thing. He's wandering around the dark like, oh, I'll make sure, I'll just see what's up over here. And he's just trying to use it as an excuse to like grope her, basically. Yeah. But then, surprise, the machine kills him, which is like the most obvious thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie sucks, except for at the end, there's a really cool song by Public Image.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good song from the 80s. And it was also used in Mr. Robot.
I've not seen that movie either.
The movie has some great use of music. It's that, and then it has, I think, Guar in it. The whole movie has like this heavy metal, like punk rock aesthetic. It's like a bunch of things mixed up into one movie. It's like a horror movie. It has a killer robot. It's sci-fi. It's post-apocalyptic. It has punk and metal music, and it's also a really colorful movie. Like
colored orange.
Yeah, well, orange and blue and yellow and green, and red. But no, a lot of the scenes are filtered with just these strong colors that give it this really unique look that you don't really see in a lot of movies from that era. I guess you see that in a lot of movies now, but now everything's shot on digital cameras and looks fake and stupid.
That is some bold criticism.
No, hardware. The second half might suck, but it's amazing. It's an amazing movie. Forever be in my heart. But another interesting thing about it is the director. That was his first movie, and He went on to make another movie called Dust Devil, which is good. It's
That sounds familiar for some reason.
Have you ever seen a movie where a guy wanders around South Africa and is possessed by a demon?
No, but oddly, I've seen a movie where a guy wanders around Libya and gets possessed by a demon.
Okay, that's on the opposite end of the continent.
Yeah.
Close enough. Actually, I think it's...
No, I'm saying that I think that that's a concept that gets used.
Yeah, well, probably. I mean, demonic possession is in no way a unique concept. Oh, man. Did you see that movie about a demonic possession? Which one?
Yeah.
One of other 100,000 movies that have done that. But he made this movie, and he's an interesting director, like just the way of shooting things. He was really good at building atmosphere, and I guess you could say world building, but like with Hardware and with Dust Devil. But then he's a bad action director, because whenever stuff actually happens, it's lame.
It's always good when stuff happens in your film that doesn't work out.
The interesting thing about this director, his name is Richard Stanley. He's a British guy. No, he made those two movies, and then he was going to have his big break. He was going to shoot a very unfortunate movie, a movie that turned out to be very unfortunate.
Oh, God.
Maybe you saw the documentary. Did you see the documentary Lost Soul?
Maybe. Is this the zombie film?
No.
Oh.
Okay, do you know the Isle of Dr. Moreau movie from the 90s that sucks?
Yeah.
He was going to direct that. Okay. Well,
the original from the 30s.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that movie sucks or not. Probably
it does.
Oh, the 30s one sucks. Okay, so I guess Isle of Dr. Moreau it's sucky other than the original book. But the 90s movie is horrible and awful. But originally they were going to bring this guy Richard Stanley in. There's this whole documentary about it, and he was a rising star, and then he got involved in this movie. But then I guess you could say what ended up happening was due to some of the production costs and the fact that he basically lost his nerve dealing with all these big Hollywood people now that he was no longer involved in small independent productions. The studio lost their faith in him, and then they basically had a court-ordered what do you call that? They basically said he had to stay like half a mile away from the set at all times or something like that.
Of his own film?
Yeah, they fired him and then
put a restraining order.
Yeah, and so they brought in some like classic movie director, like the guy who did what was it? He did a bunch of like spy thriller movies in like the 60s and 70s, and that's what he was known for. And then they had him direct The Isle of Dr. Moreau, like a weird sci-fi kind of movie.
Yeah.
And it was a horrible mess, and the movie has Val Kilmer, and Val Kilmer is a horrible asshole. Like, and I don't mean the character, I mean in real life he's a horrible asshole. Like, he would attack other film crew members. I mean, not like assault them like physically, but he would just get in their face and make demands, and he was the best person ever according to himself. But also famously they brought in Marlon Brando. Oh. And at that point and he was to play Dr. Moreau himself, but he was super jaded by that point. And he hated Hollywood and wanted to burn everything to the ground. So that's basically what he did in the movie. He tried to sabotage everything. And they went along with all his demands because they wanted him in the movie to, keep that billing. So they could say Marlon Brando's in the movie. Like, there's a part in this documentary where they're talking about they were shooting something and they had everything ready. And then he said, wait, no, Marlon Brando says, I need, for my costume, I want peacock feathers in my hat in this costume that I'm wearing. And he just demanded that on the spot. And by the way, this movie's shot in, I believe it was shot in New Guinea. And the weather there is very unstable, so like shooting time was very time sensitive. and they had all so keep that in mind when I'm talking about this stuff. So they had to pause the shooting to go find a peacock feathers, and they actually did it, and it's only because one of the set designers or the costume designers happened to I think he found an actual peacock and then plucked it.
That's hilarious and awful.
And there's so much terrible stuff about this movie, like okay, Marlon Brando demanded a midget. He demanded a midget sidekick assistant for his Dr. Moreau character.
Okay.
So they had to bring in a weird midget.
Okay.
Yeah, they just demanded that, and they put it in the movie. And if you ever watch South Park, you know the weird professor character?
No, I don't watch South Park.
Oh, well, okay. If anyone in the audience watches South Park, the weird professor guy that lives in the lab, his little monkey character is based on that midget.
Oh.
Yeah.
How pleasant.
Yeah. And the professor is based on Marlon Brando in this movie. No. And just all these weird demands to try and sabotage the movie. And then also, probably the weirdest thing is Richard Stanley. So he was court ordered to stay away from the set at all times. As they were shooting this movie, he was actually living with like a cult of hippies, like on the periphery of the set.
Okay.
Yeah, like a bunch of hippies that just lived out in the jungle, basically. And then he just did a bunch of LSD with them. And that's what he was doing the whole time. And eventually he got the idea to sneak back onto the set wearing one of the animal people costumes, because it's Dr. Moreau, they have the animal people. He put on one of the costumes, and he's actually in the movie. He's in the movie that he was banned from participating in. Yeah, as a weird animal person, and no one noticed.
Huh. So apparently this film came out.
Oh yeah, and it was horrible. I think it ruined everyone's career, and it lost lots of money, and it sucked.
I've never heard of it. I didn't realize there was a remake.
Yeah, well, there you go. You've never heard of it.
Yeah.
It's a crappy Isle of Dr. Moreau movie from the 90s. I think 1996.
Oh, this is the one from the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying there was a third one. Then yes, I have heard of it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that ruined everyone's career, and that ruined Richard Stanley's career, and that's why he never made movies after that, even though he was a talented director. It's tragic, because I wish he made more movies, but...
Are we sure he's not alive still?
No, he's alive.
Could he still make
Although I'm
films?
confused about what he does. I don't know. What is
Gas station attendant.
No, I think he was a trust fund kid or something, because there's like videos of him, and he's just like...
Say his name one more time.
Richard Stanley. And then the picture of him, he has long hair and wears like a leather sun hat, or a leather cowboy hat. It's a tragedy of Hollywood that this guy who made horror schlock didn't go on to make great things. And it's funny, Hardware and Dust Devil have a very unique visual style that stands out, and I see those, and it's just a very stark looking movies amongst other films from that era. And then you watch
He's done a ton of films since then.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah.
Unless he made them all in the last 2 years since I've looked at his Wikipedia entry.
Since 2001, he's been active. But he's almost exclusively a writer now.
Oh, okay.
He was in Joe Dorowski's Dune. As one of the interviewed people.
I don't remember that. Probably because I watched that documentary before I watched Hardware.
Yeah, he directed a film called La Tour du Monde. But almost everything else he was a writer for.
Okay.
He was a writer for Children of the Kingdom, The White Darkness,
that's
the Myth.
But he...
Tons of documentaries.
He's no longer a filmmaker, though.
No. He guest stars in films from time to time. And
let's make a movie and have him guest star.
I do want to make a movie.
Let's make our Mad Max ripoff.
I unfortunately have a concept that I really want to go with first.
And it's not a Mad Max ripoff.
It's not a
That's
Mad Max
fine.
ripoff.
Well, explain this concept for our audience. Unless you don't want anyone to steal your idea.
Oh, if someone steals it, I'm still going to make it. So there is a witch that lives in our neck of the woods in Washington, supposedly. Perfect for spooky, scary movie storytelling time. There's apparently this witch that lives in the hills around our valley. She was apparently a prostitute who lived in one of the mining towns. And the local miners eventually demanded something of her she wouldn't do. So they made fun of her and ran her out of town and ran her into the forest. At which point she fell in with a coven of witches and ended up leading them. And she now uses her abilities of mind control to control people's minds, to have them go out into the woods alone at night. And either she drains their life force from them in order to stay young and beautiful, or she turns them into slaves to get stuff for her from town, where they'll go about their normal lives and make money and, do normal things, and then buy extra things or steal extra things for her to take back to her lair. And when she's done with them, she drains them of their life energy.
Okay, so some vampirism.
Yeah. And so I just think that's an interesting concept for a movie, because it has exploitation schlock written all over it.
No, we need to make this into some Kino. We need to make this like Richard Stanley would make this. He made Hardware and Dust Devil.
Well, it's just
and nothing else.
It's an
Kino. Okay.
It's an interesting concept because you could shoot it all exclusively in the woods, because that's the concept of the movie.
Hold up. Don't shoot everything in the woods.
All in the woods.
Suck.
An hour and a half wandering around in the woods.
It'll suck.
Oh, this is going to suck anyway, but...
No, you got to diversify your locations. You got to shoot it in the mountains as well.
Oh, I have ideas.
You got to shoot it in the mines. You got to shoot it in the fields and inside of buildings.
I have ideas, Jack, and I actually have a friend of mine working right now on writing the script.
Oh.
So, I legitimately want to do this.
Here, I'll be the director of photography. Even though I've never handled a camera.
Yeah, I want to do this as a super low budget schlock film where basically everything's done as favors, more or less.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, no, for actors?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Horrifying. What a horrifying concept.
That's the part
that's the real horror.
Yeah. We'll talk about this after the cast, but this is something I seriously want to do. I legitimately want to do it next year, maybe. Possibly start.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, dear listener, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back soon.
Hopefully.
Until next time, see you out there.